We have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars of Wrestling Show, episode 479. I'm your man behind the microphone, Scholar Jeff. Joining us, as always, is the OG Undisputed Scholar himself. He is the one and only Scholar Tarek. Scholar Tarek, how are you feeling tonight, sir?
I'm feeling good. Damn it. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling spectacular.
I could just strut myself all up and down the man cave down here, just strolling like there's no tomorrow.
No chance you're gonna do that.
This genetic jackhammer is just strutting all over the place.
You don't have the grapefruits to host the Scholars of Wrestling show. Also joining us this week,
Damn
damn
it.
it. Also joining us this week, damn it. He is Scholar Pete. Scholar Pete, how the hell are you?
Very good, Scholar Jeff. Thank you.
If I
It's
do that
hard
for
to
any
hear you.
longer, my voice is gonna kill me. I don't know.
That's fine.
Vince, I don't know how the hell you do that.
Uh, did he smoke? That could probably be a part of it.
I don't
We just
think
cut off Pete's
I
intro.
don't know.
So
I totally take him as a smoker because I feel like the backstage would just be a cloud of like just smoke everywhere you look.
he could be a
But
cigar smoker.
yeah, no. Let me tell you something, gentlemen. It's a good day. It's a good day. You know why it's a good day? Because here I am in the lights, getting ready to take back my title, and lo
Oh,
and behold, who is not here? It's
oh,
Scholar Brian. Where is Scholar Brian, Scholar Tarek?
he has to take care of business, but don't worry. Like this is still here. This just continuing to show that the undisputed scholars are running this show, continuing showing dominance. Hello. Mwah.
You know, when
Ah,
I was a champion, I was always on the show. Even when I wasn't champion, I was on the show. It's I am the people's champion, and they want me to have the belt back. So let me tell you, Scholar Brian, next week can't come fast enough. You hear me? I cannot wait for our rivalry to come to a head. And I hope it's decided and held in the cell with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, because one of us will be standing tall as champion. Scholar Jeff, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let Scholar Brian know where I stand.
the
you might
champion
even
still will
say
remain undisputed.
you might even say right now with this feud that there's a little bit of bad blood.
Boo!
Let me tell you
Boo!
what. One, well
Boo!
done, sir. Well
It's
done.
like I'm the one that pulls out the dad puns. Boo!
Listen,
Boo!
Scholar Jeff. As long as you're on team improv, Pete, obviously Scholar Tarek. It's a little delusional right now being on the team of Scholar Brian, but come on over to the
I gotta
water
support my
where it's
tag partner.
beautiful.
Come on.
Listen, it's beautiful in blue, and me and Scholar Jeff will just school you guys, and it's going to be wonderful to watch you guys crumble at bad blood. It truly is.
Oh,
But
you and it's like the youth. Just look at it. It's like he thinks he's on our level. So
He
cute.
thinks he's big people.
He thinks he's a big scholar. So adorable. Shame on you.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, this week was certainly good for any and all scholars of wrestling, even if you're not a scholar of wrestling, if you catch my drift, because there was a very notable docu-series that just came out this week, one that's going to be remembered for a long time to come. We're going to be breaking it down for you here, but before we get to all that, we have something very, very important to talk to you about in a little segment we like to call Backstage News.
Indeed, we shall go ahead once again, peek behind that curtain, and just think, oh, look at that. We're in the 90s and 2000s, and there's Vince McMahon trying to hook himself up with any female wrestler that he has on his roster. Uh, typical, typical monster of a man that is. And just go ahead and just continuing on, going in, checking in on backstage news.
News.
ooh,
Genetic jackhammer, damn it.
Man.
You monster of a bastard.
Oh, we're going to get to him in due time. But
Uh,
first, before we get to all that nonsense and break it all down, let's cleanse our palates with a little bit of not just good news, as far as we're concerned, but with some really exciting news because it was just announced earlier this past week, maybe only a couple days ago, that the time and the place of SummerSlam 2025 has been announced. And wouldn't you know it, it's at MetLife Stadium, right in our backyard here in New Jersey. And I'll tell you what, I could not be more thrilled. I was really hoping, like, okay, as fun as WrestleMania 40 was this week, or this year rather, I'm, I would love to go to another show sometime soon, another big show, because their new pay-per-views now are a blast. I really wanted to do something, wasn't quite sure when, wasn't quite sure how, and then Smackaroonie, the world's first two-night SummerSlam is coming to right in our backyard in New Jersey at MetLife Stadium in early August.
Are you say you're ready for the biggest party of the summer, Scholar Jeff?
You damn right I am. I'm more hyped than I've ever been. Like this is I was looking forward to SummerSlam. It's always a great show. But to have it so close to where we're at, like we're getting tickets. There's no question.
Oh, absolutely. Before we were all planning on saving up to get Mania tickets for Vegas next year. But once we got this news, it was like, you know what? We don't have to worry about all the planning, hotel,
No
vacation.
hotels, no
Oh,
airfare. Just drive your ass down there and spend some time during the day if you got it, and just
and
enjoy
in my
2 nights of a
case,
great show.
and on my case, once the show is over, well, at least, but both nights are over, I'll just go right over to White Castle, just like 5 minutes down the road.
You should have heard Busted
Typical.
Open. You should have heard Busted Open radio this morning. They were like, okay, expect like White Mana and White Castle and all the places like that to be
Who brought
absolutely
up White
mobbed the
Mana?
entire weekends.
Who brought
Uh
up White Mana? That's awesome.
I
I
think it
mean,
was May. I know the main host, Dave LaGreca. I know he's a Jersey native, so it may have been either him or one of the Jersey natives like calling in to like hype up WrestleMania or
Oh, yeah.
SummerSlam rather.
White Mana is gonna get a lot of attention if that happens. Yeah.
That place is mobbed enough as it is that I can't
Yeah.
even imagine it during SummerSlam season. That's gonna be bananas.
Hell, I haven't been to White Mana in years.
but that's what I mean. Let's look at it, boys. That what a great venue this is for MetLife Stadium and for WWE. Having SummerSlam being 2 nights, just that great. It's like I said to my tag team partner, Scholar Jeff over here, that it's the biggest party this summer, and why not? It'd be 2 days. You know what I'm saying, gentlemen? And I mean, with SummerSlam being here at MetLife, what a time it will be for a wrestling fan to experience the white mana, to try the New York City atmosphere. It is going to be mob with all the best places, but good on WWE for making SummerSlam 2 nights in MetLife, having it a blast here in the New Jersey area.
I hope they really bring the entire experience to SummerSlam, like
This is their
WWE
first.
World,
It's their
whatever they
first
call
time with it.
Access. Yeah,
First time 2 night event here. Oh, they're to quote John Hammond, "Spare no expense."
And that Triple H is going to do it justice because he's been here. It's going to be the SummerSlam first 2 nights. Let's make it. Oh, that Triple H is back. Here's 5 great matches on one card, 5 great matches on another for 2 nights. You can't go wrong with either night you pick.
No.
and I'll tell you what. Speaking as someone who was at WrestleMania 40, and just seeing that whole experience and how much fun it was between the actual WWE world and seeing all those exhibits to the superstore, and which was already a lot of fun. And in the same town, there was also WrestleCon where we got all those autographs, and there were so many meet and greets. It was unreal. If we get anything close to that, invading our neck of the woods, there's going to be no excuse. All of us need to go to that, and we need to coordinate some good times next summer. And it's going to be absolutely spectacular. I hope you all get to see it because I had a blast this year, and next year is even going to be more of a blast.
Oh yeah, and it'll be my first SummerSlam. Already been to two WrestleManias, been to two Survivor Series. I need to go. I need to check one SummerSlam and one Royal Rumble. I already know you went to a Rumble, fool.
I did not go to a Rumble.
Didn't you
Rumble's
go
the
to
only
the?
one I've never been to. I've been to SummerSlams. I've been to
I could have
Survivor
sworn.
Series. I've been to
I
I've
guess
been
it's
to
someone else we must know that went to Rumble when it was I think in Philly.
yeah, I'm sure we know somebody. If the Royal Rumble was in Philly, I'm sure we know someone who went, but
Hmm.
certainly wasn't me.
At least maybe Charlie.
It's possible. It's possible. But hey, I'm sure that person will make their presence known because we've got just under a whole year to prepare for this, and it's going at least for the scholars of wrestling, it's going to be legendary
You're gonna see us all there.
for sure. And just
Spoiler
another
alert,
little
I'll be champion of Scholars of Wrestling at that time.
hey,
Sure you will.
if you've got the belt, we're going to drag you to WrestleCon and force you to pay for autographs to get that thing autographed. That's your duty as a title holder during WrestleCon if you can go. If I can do it, you can do it. I believe in you.
Thank you, my tag team partner.
Apparently, you guys
Yeah,
are tag team partners now.
I
Pete
saw
says
you
a lot of
smiling
things,
the
don't
whole
he?
time, Scholar Tark. I saw you smiling the whole time.
I was just like, so is he just, or is like, yeah, hey, guess what? You, Jeff, over here. I'm gonna make you my tag team partner. You okay with that? Actually, I think
No.
okay, you're good. It's like you're actually good. Well, actually, all right, we're tag team partners. All right.
Actually, I never agreed to. Actually, yeah, we're
Oh
no.
yeah. It's like you're gonna be the head cheese
Don't
of
worry,
the
Scholar
scholars
Jeff.
of
I
wrestling.
Am I?
always get the yes.
If that's the case, then I have a very important question to ask before we move on.
You are Steve Blackman.
That's all I need to hear. Anyway, moving on. Moving on to another little
Master of that
happy
kendo
dose of
stick.
news. With a happy dose of news, we out of nowhere, apparently, we got some news that MJF has been cast in Happy Gilmore 2 of all things. Like,
Let,
what?
let me let me tell you boys a little story. The my main job, as you guys know, I work at a school. But today at the middle school, Adam Sandler was actually recording Happy Gilmore 2 in front of the middle school that I work closely at.
No
And
kidding.
yeah, true story.
Were you able
My
to see
friend was
him?
sending me videos and everything, went up, said hello to everybody. So that's going to be cool. It's showing that this is being taken seriously on location. And with MJF coming in, I mean, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. We all know what he really should play if at all. It's obviously going to be Shooter McGavern's son, which is just, I think, going to be fantastic. You already have Travis Kelsey being billed for this as well. I think this is going to be a fun trip down memory lane of the classic characters that you remember from back in the day.
Now, I guess it just brings the scholars quick talk. Will he have a fight with Drew Carey this time?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to vote no, just because he doesn't, as much as I like Drew Carey, I feel like he doesn't have the same oomph
That
that
Bob
Bob
Barker
Barker
had.
does. Yeah, it's not going to have the same impact. It's just going to be like, oh, hey, Price is Right host again. It's
So then
I
who
feel
would you put in that position as the celebrity scholar, Jeff? Who is that moment for that celebrity for this moment for this movie, excuse me.
if I had to pick anyone for a very similar scene, I would need to think about this. It would need to be someone with some sort of Americana, someone who you would not expect to get into a fight with Adam Sandler or curse or call him a bitch or something. So it needs to be someone you really don't expect, someone respectable, someone
Taylor
you
Swift.
really mm,
Wait, who did he say?
None.
Taylor Swift. I
No,
don't think so.
that's all jokes, all jokes.
Good
I
question. I'll need to think about that one. I don't think I've got a solid concrete answer for you.
And then,
Huh.
or have it just be Wayne Brady since he made the "Let's make a deal" joke. It's the price is right, Happy. This time he'll try and say Price is Right, but it'll actually be let's make a deal. No.
I did think of that, but then again, thanks to the Chappelle Show skit, I feel like they've already made a very similar joke. So I don't think Wayne Brady would really work quite as well. Oh boy, this is a good one.
Maybe it is just going to be Travis Kelsey. I don't know.
Maybe it. Honestly, this name is really popping up into mind.
Maury Povich.
I know, honestly, Barack Obama.
Why?
He's because he's Americana. He's just like a figure you would not expect. And let's be real, of all the living presidents, he's probably the only one spry enough to actually take down Adam Sandler.
Let me tell you something, Scholar Jeff. This is why you're my tag team partner. What a beautiful, beautiful answer.
Besides, if we got Barack Obama to call Adam Sandler a bitch on that would be fantastic. You can't tell me that. I don't even care if you don't like Barack Obama or if you do. I don't care. If you get him to call Adam Sandler a bitch, that would be fantastic.
Preach, my Scholar Jeff. Preach. This is a true scholar right here. He's on the show defending his time. Appreciate you, Scholar Jeff.
I'm just making Obama jokes. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's just trying to just kiss your ass.
Hey, if I
No,
if I'm the next one to win the Scholars of Wrestling Championship, don't think that this is your pass to a free title shot, sir.
listen, Scholar Torque. Just because my tag team partner's here and yours is missing in action, you know,
It's okay. It doesn't matter if one of us is here. The undisputed scholars is everywhere. Remember that.
The undisputed scholars are everywhere.
We run the show.
Speaking of running the show,
Yeah.
are we ready
Nice
to
segue.
start? Are we ready to start talking about this whole Mr. McMahon docu series? Because I
I
know we've been
honestly
talking about it for some time, and now that it's finally out, we'll break it down in finer detail. But first of all, uh, Pete, I know you have not caught up with the entire series just yet. Tarek,
that
have
is
you
correct.
seen the entire series yet?
I have seen the entire series. I actually finished it last night. I didn't watch it all in one sitting, but it was like a sprinkle for like within the last couple of days. But I must say, I'm not looking forward to talking about it because I don't want to dedicate an entire episode just talking about Vince McMahon. But because this is the biggest thing that really is that came out of this week, it's kind of like a no choice scenario. I mean, I was really just excited to be like, okay, Vince McMahon, he retired in shame. He had to resign because what was it, Slim Jim that left first that got them
Slim
to
Jim
leave?
was the first of the major sponsors that backed out.
And it
And
was that
then as
point,
soon as they threatened the money, they cut him off. They cut off
yep.
Vince McMahon.
It was one of
So,
those things like I was more than happy to just never talk about him again. Let's hope that this will actually be the last time that we actually really discuss in detail Vincent Kennedy McMahon on the Scholars of Wrestling.
well, I will say this: if it puts your mind at ease, I've seen quite a lot of documentaries and docu-series, and this one goes beyond just Vince McMahon the person. It also talks about a considerable amount of history
Oh,
and the way they frame certain things and the way the documentary as a whole has been put together and how it was put together, that alone is a story in and of itself.
oh,
So,
I 100% agree. Yeah, I saw that too. It was like this series was more than just Vince McMahon. It really was because he was like this really was the history lesson for WWE for the Netflix audience or the mainstream audience that don't really know what WWE is really all about. At least not the ones who watch it regularly, like from the casuals to us to the hardcore fans like us. This is definitely just okay. This is the history lesson. He is the Vince was the man who brought WWF at the time to the point where Yeah, it's no longer it's pro wrestling is more than just small territories with small businesses. He took all of it and turned it into such a big conglomerate that now it's at that point where it's way beyond him. Like the WWE now, completely different animal for the better, and getting a history lesson of how basically we got from the territories to now where we're at in preparations for when Raw moves to Netflix in January. Oh yeah, it was a good history lesson on what the WWE professional wrestling is and what you're going to be expecting. Well, not really what you're going to be expecting, but just it's like I guess to say here's what it is, here's what it was, here's what it is now, and we're also talking about the guy who made it into this to where it is where it is now.
So let me ask you something, guys, who I haven't obviously seen. How is it set up? Is it in different eras? Is it like the early Vince McMahon and then moves into like specific areas like the Attitude Area, and then like post, and then like maybe the downfall? Like, what's the scope? What am I getting into? How many episodes? Is it a current cast? Like, give me what am I experiencing when I watch this documentary?
Well, first of
Wrestlers
all,
that I know?
oh yeah, first of all, if you're watching this or listening to us and you have not seen the show in its entirety, I think we can speak for all of us here that if you can, go and watch the entire series as a whole. It's absolutely worth a watch. Pause this video, watch the entire thing if you haven't already, and then come back to us right here. Ready? Okay, moving on. Anyway, to answer your question, this this docu-series more or less goes in chronological order, starting with Vince McMahon's early life to the current day. However, as far as the documentary is filmed and composed, that's not the first thing you see. The first thing you see acknowledges you constantly get time frames of not just what's happening, what the year is, but also what the time is when certain
Events were
interview
taking place.
not just when certain events are taking place, but also when certain interviews for this docu series take place. Because as they'll constantly remind you, most of the interviews that were conducted for this piece happened before the public allegations from Janelle Grant were surfacing. So,
Oh,
and they will constantly, even when you hear and see someone talking and giving an answer to a question, especially towards the end, they will show like exactly what year this interview took place for context, because there you can very clearly see when they get an interview with somebody after the allegations went public, they the tone is different, the responses are different, everything is contextualized, and that's one of the docu series' best strengths, I can say as a longtime wrestling fan, where I can tell a lot of us were, like Tarek said, most of the stories for hardcore fans like us, longtime fans, we've already known generally most of them. There are some minute details and some context that is added, and even for better or for worse, more up to the probably the most up to date comments from Vince McMahon that we will ever get and ever get again, which I think is one of the pieces for biggest boons, really, where they kind of got a tell all from Vince McMahon, and I mean tell all, where he basically tells on himself, and in reasons we'll get into later on in this piece. And given how the state of things now, think it was I don't think we're ever going to get that from someone of his stature ever again. He was basically, by sheer happenstance, got kind of tricked into giving some answers that he would not give even a matter of months later. It's absolutely wild. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this docuseries starts with Vince McMahon saying, "Okay, I'm not going to tell you every single wild story, but I'll give you enough to make it interesting. I don't want the whole world to know the real me." So, right out of the gate, Vince McMahon is portraying himself as a very unreliable narrator. So, yeah, as first episode, we get his early life. We get, how he bought the company from his father. We get about how he developed on TV, how he took things over, and it's basically a lot of it. After that moment, it starts off as a lot of what we already know as literal scholars of wrestling, wrestling historians. Now it takes us into episode two. Episode two, just entitled Heat. And now we start talking about some of the earliest known scandals in WWE or WWF at the time.
Are
Most
these about an hour
notably,
long? Sorry to
uh,
interrupt.
I
Each
think
episode was just under an hour. Yep.
Okay.
I think there was one or two that was like that was like a few minutes over. I
give
think
or
like an
take,
hour
yeah,
and 4 minutes
Okay.
at least.
But you're
But
sitting down for an
everything is
hour
usually like
for
50,
6 days.
55 minutes.
Okay.
yeah. But
I
if
mean,
you're, but yeah, it's a lot of footage. But then again, for fans of wrestling or fans of just like true crime or whatever, for us, I thought it was a very robust, fascinating watch for various reasons, as we'll get into as
yeah,
we
of course, of
continue on.
course. Sorry to cut you off, sir. My
Yeah.
tag team partner. I'm so sorry.
Oh, please, my buzz for saying, not for kissing. As far as for episode one goes, I started taking notes on a couple of the things, and from the only two notes I've got from episode one are they actually show some early footage of a young Vince McMahon appearing on David Letterman, believe it or not, which I thought was really cool. That, and I just wrote this one note: John Stossel dash still a wiener. Do you remember who John Stossel is?
I'm
I'll take
terrible with names. I'm terrible with names, but once you
John
just say,
Stossel was the guy who tried to expose professional wrestling in the
oh, is he the
80s.
one that what's his name interviewed?
David
Uh
Schultz.
David
He
Schultz that
he
David
ran
Schultz
into
interviewed?
David
Yeah,
David
yeah.
Schultz and he just like, what do you think? This
It's
is
the shit
fake?
out of him.
Smack.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, he should. I know he shouldn't have poked the bear. He was, but even still, John Stossel was a wiener. But anyway, moving on. Episode two. This is when they start getting into some of the earlier scandals, including, and I'm not just talking about the steroid trials. I'm surprised they even brought up first off the Ring Boy scandal, which was a little bit before my time, and just like some of the molestation of the Ring Boys that I feel like was just really swept under the rug. And basically,
I actually forgot about the Ring Boy scandal once, and then I got reminded of it during this and just how they have Tony Atlas, who actually was kind of the standout when it comes to the other interviewers or the people
Tony
getting interviewed.
Atlas ended up being the MVP of the interviewers, who wasn't Vince McMahon. Like that guy just did not give a damn. He
Oh
was just
no, he did not, and it was
he was
actually I think it was
fantastic.
great. He was a load of fun, but it was disappointing to hear some of the things that even he said about like in connections with this, and they were discussing on Pat Patterson and how they were using his homosexuality to label him as kind of like a pervert. And Tony Atlas would say that would go on in this and just say that a couple of times he quote unquote touched his pecker.
I love how the
So
interviewers was like,
wait, what was
he
that?
did what? He touched my pecker.
He touched his pecker. So it's kind of a shame that like you don't have Pat Patterson here to basically, as some put it, defend himself with that. But it is a shame to know like how much respect I have for Pat Patterson to just be like, oh well, I guess it is just different. It's like It's just different times, but and I don't know if it's just him messing around with just some people in the back, including Tony Atlas. But when it came to uh, the initial scandal of the Ring Boys, yeah, I had to be reminded of that one. I'm just like, oh my God, that's right. And a couple of them were like teenagers. These kids were teenagers, and and a couple of them are getting molested by the wrestlers, and when the interview asked Tony Ellis like, uh, why didn't you guys or why didn't anyone report it? And his response, well, who can you report it to? And he's like, Vince, you can report it to Vince. And he all Tony Atlas did was just laugh at that, at just the idea of like, it's not going to matter who you tell. If you tell anybody, you're going to probably get in trouble for it. And all that whole thing did was just makes me look back on like listening to Undertaker's podcast, and he's just talking about how different times were backstage compared to how things are now. Like you had to have like weapons in order to have protect yourself for certain aspects, and it's just unbelievable. Like while we're growing up watching these people put do what they did, but not knowing the full context of what goes on once they go behind the curtain. It's a completely different animal, and it's just really scary and kind of depressing. Just looking at it, it's like, oh, I wish like it's it's good that now we know this information. It just sucks that it had to be that way.
And in a way, there's a couple things I noticed in regards to that really just really kind of haunt me a little bit. Two things. First of all, when they talk about the whole Ring Boy scandal, and they talked about, the three people who were accused, one of them being Pat Patterson. Uh, they were talking about, okay, how Vince said, okay, one of the three is innocent. And I said, which one? Pat Patterson. Calling it a gay witch hunt. They had to sort of basically cover for him. He didn't do anything. He's just, he's an openly gay man in the 80s. They just had to protect him and get the heat off of him. But between what people like Tony Atlas says, and I believe there was once a interview with Roddy Piper at a certain point where he was talking about Pat Patterson. He would just sort of like go off in a trance and be very cryptic about things. Like with Pat Patterson, I actually had to rewatch this section to see what exactly about Pat Patterson was said, because I feel like the other two were guilty, no question. With Pat Patterson, I feel like with something like this, I honestly feel like I don't quite know what to believe at this point. And given this that Pat Patterson has just recently passed away, I don't even know if we're ever going to find out. Doubly so when you factor in that how little well, minor spoiler here, but Jimmy Hart is actually in this thing, but he's only in it for like less than 10 seconds
I
and
think he
only
was
said
only in for like episode 4, I believe,
something like that.
four or
And and
five.
he just had this, all he did was just say, like, they asked him one question, and he was like, oh, I don't know what to say to this question. I don't know if what they don't want getting out or something like that. Like,
It was the legacy question.
what, yeah, whatever.
They were asking what Vince's legacy would be, and that was the episode 5 before that was leading up to episode 6.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up now is just because that there, even now, there's still this sense of control that certain people still have about people in this industry that is, even after all these years, all these decades, there's still a whole lot of claws and a whole lot of pies, and we don't we may never know how far the rabbit hole goes in certain instances, probably not in our lifetimes, but in the meantime we are getting a lot of dirt that's being dug up and brought to the surface at last, including the other story in episode 2, the Rita Chatterton story, which again was slightly before our time, the first female referee in WWF, and supposedly Vince sexually assaulted her and threatened her job too. Which, given what we know now, those claims seem really, really familiar, really suspect. Especially when we got Vince's most recent quote and the context that was added starting in this episode. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Tarek?
In episode 2?
In episode 2, Vince says something like, "Oh yeah, that that happened, but what happened there wasn't rape; it was an affair. But if it was, the statute of limitations had run
The
out." I'm like,
yep, yep.
"Whoa,
Once,
what?"
okay. You can get, he could have passed that with his first thing, but once he brought up the statute of limitations, you would have to ask, like, why bring that up if it wasn't true? If it wasn't true,
And
that
then
was
right at the end of the episode, they tacked on like, "Oh yeah, when there was a brief window of like when the statute of limitations was
on
set
hold.
aside, was
Yeah.
on hold for 1 year. That same year, Vince McMahon paid out a settlement to Rita Chatterton
Hmm.
during that year." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, bro, hold the phone here. This is the rabbit hole goes deep," which just lends credence to all the stuff that was happening. But even then,
And
we're not even halfway done with this series at that point.
but you also like we really didn't go much into detail on this when we just briefly talked about episode 1. Uh, but it was also referenced in later episodes that they were I think it was a Playboy interview that he had, and he was just talking about
Yes,
how his stepfather used to beat him and how his mother used to I mean, I guess make some sexual advances, I believe was the right wording they used.
Vince McMahon, using Vince McMahon's words exactly, in the Playboy interview, he was talking about how he was molested, and it was just like,
And it was by his mom.
the
And then
interviewer said, "Okay, okay, you said," and then Vince said it wasn't the male. Like, okay, he was all right. You said you didn't get along with very well with your mom. You said that your stepdad, fought you but didn't abuse you. Have we found the culprit? And then Vince just sort of nods.
mhm.
And I
It's
remember that interview. I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. I noticed that when they talked about that during his early life, and they talked about all the stuff that was happening, we're like, "Oh yeah, we all the things you deal with, just like the lack of money, the fighting, the incest, all that other stuff." Like, he blazed right past it very, very quickly, to the point
yeah.
where you can very much tell like he has a hard time talking about this, and I don't think it's very clear that he never properly dealt with that abuse.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see that. I'll even like it's stemming from those experiences from his early age, from what his stepfather and mother did to him before Vince McMahon Sr. came into his life. You can tell it during that time period definitely left a big impact on him because it reached him to the point where the only way for him to show strength is to like present yourself as a bit as tough and be tough, even if you have to like pull hair or go after the ribs. As he didn't mind cheating as long as he won. That was his frame of mind, and you see just how he was put in reflects on how he was treating uh not only the wrestlers that he had over the years, but also his children. But we'll go over that particular thing when we get to episode 5, because that was where they mainly focused on his kids. Just the episode on his on his family, like Linda, Shane, and Stephanie. But we'll discuss that more in detail in 5. But when you just look back on just the abuse that he had, yeah, it's clear as day he never recovered from it because it molded what he did to his wrestlers and then inevitably his children when they started getting more into the business in the future years.
Yeah. And he did talk about, he did mention in certain points, like, okay, yeah, you got to deal with it, but, or no, you just got to put it behind you and don't look back. You just got to keep on going. Like, that's not actually dealing with it. And when you, like you talked about, the more this whole docu series goes on, the more you begin to realize, well, no, Vince really hasn't confronted any of this at all. Anything that has hurt him, which he's quoted as saying in the past, where he will compartmentalize everything. And when you, as you go on through this whole docu series, you begin to see exactly how what the consequences were of not dealing with those wounds. And like you said, one of them goes into how he treated his wrestlers and how his wrestlers treated him. Uh, Go moving on to episode 3. We're talking about all the screw jobs and all the stuff that's happening with the Monday Night Wars, where the episode kicks off with the whole Wendy Richter betrayal thing. But then as you go on and as the Monday Night Wars start and WCW really starts getting off the ground, Tarek, do you have something?
I'm actually really glad I'm really glad you brought up the Wendy Richter thing because that was actually something that was just you don't realize how similar that is to how they actually uh laid out episode 3 in particular because it was such a similar situation that what happens later, which will be the Montreal screw job and just how similar those things. I just was like, oh, I whoever decided to lay out this episode did it very well. But last thing to say about episode 2, I just found it hilarious that that episode opened with the uh what was the name of that song that he sang with all the 80s wrestlers?
Stand back.
Stand Back.
Yes. And
That
they showed it in
episode,
its entirety. That's
they showed the
fantastic.
entire Stand Back video music video as the opener to episode 2. Okay. That was that's a little fun thing. All right, now on to episode 3. But yeah, it's fun. Like I do appreciate just whoever did the layout of these episodes really knew what they were going for each particular episode. And I just really noticed it in this episode when they started with a McMahon screw job and ended with a McMahon screw job.
And you know what? I It actually goes a little bit deeper than that because right at going back to episode 1 for a minute, when they're talking about the territory days and how Vince was basically buying out all the top talent from all the different territories to assemble this new WWF roster, all the territories were like, "You're just poaching all of our talent. What the hell?" And Vince is like, "Well, I'm just doing business. What are you gonna say? What are you gonna do?"
It's competition.
But
That
then
was mhm.
fast forward to when WCW is getting off the ground, and they're ended up bringing in W WWF talent to WCW, including Hulk Hogan. Vince is all gets all indignant. And he's like, "Well, come on, that's not the way business should be done, pal. That's not good business." And we're like,
He
"That's
was
that's exactly what you did to everyone during the territories." And they even
he made
say it
this
during the piece. It like 10 minutes later, like you're criticizing WCW for doing to what you did all the territories a couple decades ago.
oh,
Are
it's
you
not even just
stupid?
WCW. It's not even just WCW. He was all focused on Ted Turner. It was all he was thinking about when he thought of WCW, it was just what Ted Turner was doing to him. Because he probably just as what as he based his Mr. McMahon character on oh God, Dr. Larry. Oh, what was the name of the one wrestler that he talked about? And then he talked about how he rode in his car running all the red lights.
I'm blanking
And
on the name too. I'm
it's like
sorry.
excuse me, Dr. Jerry. Oh, I'll
I
look at
don't
this,
recall
but
that either, but yeah, yeah.
back to the WCW. Yeah, it was all mainly focused on uh it was Ted, not just WCW taking it. It was Ted Turner that's making all these deals and get poaching all his wrestlers, and he talking about, oh, they're doing this to, they're taking my wrestlers and giving them better deals, and you have the interviewer going, well, isn't that what you did with during the territory days? And he tried to set it up as basically him being a victim. It's like, oh, this was different. This is different because Ted Turner is doing this he was doing it to hurt me. I was just doing it for competition. And you would just be like, well, you're basically explaining what he did, what compared to what you did. So you're being kind of a hypocrite on this one. It's like,
BS. Serious, serious BS all around.
so as you're putting it, when we said he's such a just unreliable storyteller, that you're hearing this, he's saying one thing, and literally the next, like a few minutes later, he's saying something else.
Oh,
And
we'll get to that double-mindedness at the during the last episode because that
it's,
comes out to bite him in the butt so hard.
oh my God, yes. And whew, did it ever.
Oh
But
yes.
more on that. And then
More on that later.
they go into more detail in this one about just, yeah, talking about the Montreal screw job, and um this was episode 3, and then and it's just
Episode
uh
4 was
it's
more of the
more about
attitude
the
era.
attitude era in this. And yeah, there's just, yeah, the formation of having WCW having 83 weeks, Bischoff talking about how even Vince, him bringing up that Vince was mainly focusing on Ted Turner, not even acknowledging Eric Bischoff, and how he's the real threat to Vince McMahon. He was the one that made it 83 weeks, and yeah, which inevitably leads to full on detail of how the Montreal screw job. But it's stuff that we all heard. Um, I don't recall any new details coming in on the Montreal screw job in this on this documentary. It's mainly stuff we already know. How it was Triple H's idea, just basically like, okay. And I think the only real news thing coming out of it was just Vince going to Triple H and Shawn Michaels after the incident and just going, put all this blame on me. He let him take this all out on me. You guys know absolutely nothing. I and instead of doing this in gorilla position, I want to go down personally and tell him to ring the bell so Brett knows this was all on me. So I think maybe, and I guess it's just really hearing it from Vince's mouth is the real, like, is the real full on detail on this, because I don't think I don't recall him ever really bringing it up to this detail in interviews
Not
even back
personally,
then.
no, no. It was always secondhand accounts for like the Dark Side of the Ring stuff and
Mm-hmm.
any other simple thing. It was basically everyone else but Vince directly. Other than that, like you said, it was this and the majority of episode 4 and the Attitude Era. That was a lot of the stories were things that were already covered to death. Uh, the one thing I noticed here, what the only two notes I've got for episode 4 are uh, the quote from Stephanie McMahon about bringing in Mike Tyson, where she was like, "Yeah, we brought in Mike Tyson, but that was before his rape convictions were a thing." And then someone off screen is just like, "Oh wait, that was after the rape convictions." And then she just looks at like, "Uh-oh, like, oh boy, what were we doing? What are we thinking?" So even then, the chronology was a little bit sketchy, which, again, if you're a fan during that time, you weren't thinking about that. And the only other note I've got here is about, again, addressing the death of Owen Hart and just getting some fresh quotes from Bret Hart about that, where once Brett, once the independent investigation found that basically it wasn't Vince trying to deliberately kill Owen Hart. It was just an accident due to negligence on the company's on the rigging company's part. It was negligence on their part. It was just a really tragic accident.
I will
That
say I honestly did not know that Brett believed that Owen's death was Vince's way of getting back at him for leaving.
it's not that so much that he thought that, but he considered it as a possibility.
Even so, even as just that, I never knew that. I never knew that's how he felt at all. And the explanation that Vince said that in response to what Brett said, that if it was Shane that fell, it would have been a different story. He would have ended that show. He would have he would have ended that over the edge. In my personal opinion, I'm sure I'm obviously not alone on this show or outside in the wrestling. That show should not have happened, or it should have ended. It should not have continued. And
Absolutely.
it just hearing everyone just going, like you hear Jeff Jarrett trying to keep the show going in that backstage interview. You have the clips showing Undertaker in his match, and he's looking at the blood, Owen's blood stained on in the ring, and then you have Brett going, if it was Shane that fell, Vince would have stopped the show. But then you have Vince next scene going, well, if it was me that fell, I would want this. I would want the show to keep going no matter what. And it's just once again showing that I guess we can use this as a segue into episode 5 that it doesn't matter who would be in that position, him, any wrestler, or Shane, that the show would have gone on. He was thinking more business than personal, and that's just how Vince is. He's just what would be best for business, no pun intended. And it doesn't matter if it was any wrestler or Shane, he would have kept it going.
And you know what? I actually caught this like when I was like speeding through the second time around on that one. If you notice, he didn't even actually address the claim. He didn't he got the question of, oh yeah, if it was Shane, you would have stopped the thing right then and there. Like Vince doesn't even address that claim. He just goes right into, oh well, if I had died, well, I would want the show to go on. Like you're a madman. You're the exception to the rule here. You are
It's
a
not
machine who knows only the WWF and nothing else. That like
Don't turn
you
it
don't
around and make
count.
it all about you. It's not about you. It wasn't about you then. What matters was what was best for your business, what was best for your wrestlers, and they were talking about that yes, the lights were out when it happened and the fans don't know, but they knew something happened. There was an accident, and having for the fans to basically show, oh, we don't care about what happened as long as the show ends, as long as the show keeps going. Mm-mm. That's it just really all of this just makes me look back and just be like, oh boy. But I'll save more detail on that when we actually talk about when we give our facial hair rating for for the series in general.
For sure. And yeah, again, like you were talking about, leading into episode 5, called Family Business. Like the title says, it goes right into the whole the family business end of it and the role that Shane, Stephanie, and later by extension Triple H have
And Linda.
about and Linda too. But I feel like most of it was just like a succession thing where
Oh, it definitely became that.
where Stephanie was seemed to be the more well equipped person in Vince's eyes, and but Shane seemed to have a different idea, and just really butt heads with his old man. But as it turned out, really all Shane ever wanted from Vince was just to have his love and respect. Like that's, you know, industry business was just business. Business was just take it or leave it. What he really wanted to do, what he really busts his ass for, even in the matches, was just to win his dad's approval and respect and love. Where have I heard that before?
Oh my God. I was just watching this and all I could think was I just want to give Shane a hug because that man put so much into WWE when he was there. Ever since he became a backstage personality and a character on screen. All he was trying to do was just show I can do this. I can do this with you, Dad. I can be a worthy successor for when the time comes. And he gained like Shane definitely gained a lot of people's respect from that Kurt Angle match he had at King of the Ring. And all the idea, like they made it perfectly clear that between the two of them, Vince favored Stephanie more than he did Shane. And in the end, like all the ideas that Shane pitched to Vince, Vince would turn it down. And if he was serious, this is actually a claim that Paul Heyman did on the show or on the documentary that Vince told Shane that if you were determined to have this angle happen on TV, you would get that knife that's over there and you would have to stab me because that's the only way you can do it. That's the only way you can get me out of the chair. That's the only way you can take control of the company is you're going to have to either buy me out like how I bought out my old man, or you're going to have to kill me over my dead body. I think he was just says, not as long as I'm alive. I think that was
If you don't do it, then I know that you're not man
then
enough to do it, and
and
I'll
if you don't
remember
do it,
that
yeah.
too.
And if you
Like,
don't, yeah, if you don't go ahead and kill me, then you are not man enough to do this. And I was just listening. I'm like going back to episode 1 and just how much he was going for getting his trying to do what he did with his dad and just how much his mom and stepdad messed him up to a point where Vince admits that he wishes his stepdad was alive so he can kill him. And all I can think about is just this man is just it's unbelievable that your ego is just so huge that you're not going to you're not going to do this forever. You're not going to run this company forever. You have to think about the future. But all he's doing is just too much for him in the now for him. He never wanted all he could think about was just how much it would be good for him. How much would be good for the business. Even threw the idea of having Triple H and Stephanie's real, like legit wedding on pay-per-view. And Stephanie said no, she didn't want to do that. So how did Vince react to it? He put her in a match with him a couple days before their wedding. And you have Linda going in like, if you give her a black eye or injure her in any way that she can't have the win, I'm divorcing you. And it's just so scary to think that he has two children that were willing to do anything for him. And all he could look at and all he looks at them is just how can he improve his business because he's married to the business. And
that was an incredible quote from Paul Heyman, where like the only thing that Vince McMahon has ever been loyal to in his life is the WWF. That is the only thing he has never cheated on or disrespected in any way. Like,
what was it that, speaking of Paul Heyman, what was it that he said in that one clip that he whispered to Stephanie?
it was something like he's looking for ways to like fight you or something like
Yeah,
all the
he's trying to
time,
find any
right?
way to fight you.
And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, it certainly seems that way."
And she just laughs it off, but you're just looking at this like, yeah, he like you have Stephanie who even on this one they're pushing on that Stephanie McMahon invented women's wrestling.
Thankfully, they didn't go quite in that direction,
Oh,
but
they definitely did. They they
the
subtly hinted at that. But how she had to twist his arm to get women's wrestling to be much more in the athletic side over the have these beautiful models, have them just be arm candy for celebrities and all that. Uh, let's see what else. I I think that's really it with episode 5,
well,
because
for
it's
me,
just
I do have going off of what you were talking about, Tarek. I think it goes even deeper than that. Just like the parallels alone. Like this is basically a cyclical. This is a family cycle of abuse and stuff like that. Like there's so many direct parallels between Vince and Shane. You think about it, yeah, his father was a hard case. He was a hard case to Shane. He
he's no, I
really
would go one step. He was a harder case on Shane.
oh, I'm building to something here. He gave Vince the crap jobs in his company. He gave Shane the crap jobs in his company. Both of them to build each other up. He wanted them to be tough and capable, learning on their own, but he also withheld love in the same respect. And he wasn't able to really tell him out front, hey, I I love you. I'm proud of you. The kinds of things that frankly, I think every guy needs to hear from their father at some point in their life that like, says, I love you and I'm proud of you. And to withhold that, to work so hard and only get to hear that only when you're like approaching the end, that is horrific. And even
And
then, Vince, from what you see in moments like the way he treated Shane, you only get that kind of behavior when you only get that kind of psychotic, abusive behavior when you don't deal with those wounds in your life, when you don't work through them, when you don't deal with them in any way. Because you mentioned that you attribute it to ego. I don't think it's just ego.
oh,
I
it's part.
see
It's
it.
only. I didn't say it's
It's
just
part of
that. It's part of it.
it's part of it. But the other part is all I saw was this is when you take a family wound, a deep psychological wound, and you let it fester and you let it just get infected. And you sooner or later it infects more of you and more of you and more of you until you eventually turn into a monster and you don't know why.
It's
This is the kind
it's
of thing that tells me exactly, oh, Vince talks about himself. Oh, I've got these two different things processes in my mind. Even I don't know who I am. Like, well, yeah, there's the reason why. Because you just instead of actually dealing with your problems, you kept trying to power through them like some sort of macho guy, because that's the only way you know how to deal with your problems. And that clearly does not work. Not anymore.
and I have to also add to that because yes, it's you have it dealing with Shane and Stephanie, and it's also just really you build it through fear, just the fear of what you would do if you ended up being on the other side, like if you ended up crossing him, and you have, and it's what's going one step further beyond Shane and Stephanie trying to fight for Daddy's approval. You have wrestlers throughout all these generations going, Vince McMahon was like a father to me. Many generate 80s,
I'm
90s,
I'm glad you
2000s,
brought that
2010s.
up. I'm
And
very glad you
it's
brought
the
that up because
exact,
there's one exact moment where that just really got to me. I'm
it's
sorry,
the
continue.
exact, it's those, I don't know if I'll bring it up, but it's just, you have all these moments where like let's do Hulk Hogan, for example. He would talk about it's like, okay, my contract in WWF expired. I'm now trying to focus on movies. You have Ted Turner come in and be like, okay, here is the deal I can give you. So much more money, a lighter schedule so you can be with your family and you can still do movies. Obviously, you would think that's such a great deal. And he all Hulk Hogan feels is that if I'm taking this deal, but I know Vince is going to be very upset with me. So you have the steroid scandal, and you have Hulk Hogan telling the FBI, "I'm going to tell you exactly what you want to hear about this whole thing." And what does he do when he gets on the stands? He decides to back up Vince McMahon because he felt that he betrayed him by going to a rival company, and I'm trying to make up for it by trying not to sell him out to the FBI for this steroid scandal. And Vince doesn't show gratitude on that one. It takes another, what was it, 10 years, maybe even more. Uh, like when the NWO came back to WWF, and he still had that grudge. He still has that, like, yeah, I'm still mad that you went to my rival company. How dare you? You you have all these wrestlers saying they would take a bullet for Vince McMahon, and Vince
Do you
clearly
remember
showing
who specifically said he was going to take a bullet for Vince McMahon?
Undertaker.
And
And
I'll tell you this right now, Undertaker was the one that shocked me the most.
with
When
what
especially
with what he said about the breaking of the streak,
yes,
that was
that's
this
exactly what I was alluding
oh
to.
my, like, here's okay, Pete, to give you context, uh before the match happened, Vince just told Taker Brock's gonna break the streak. And this was during the documentary they were talking about concussions and what happened with Chris Benoit and Christopher Nowinski with the CTE. Uh, and we all know what happened with Taker during his match with Lesnar. He got concussed, and he barely remembers what happens after a certain point in this match during the match. And Vince now takes it is like he doesn't believe that Taker got concussed. He was just dealing with the shock of that the streak was going to lose that night.
And that
And
was the exact moment I couldn't help it. I just screamed at my TV, bullshit. Like that
you yell bullshit. I'm gonna drop my one. I heard that and I just yelled, fuck you. And because you all know me how big of an Undertaker fan I am, and just how much Undertaker means to me as a wrestling fan. And to hear Vince McMahon, the man that Undertaker said that he would take a bullet for, basically turn around and basically say that, oh, I don't believe this. He's just doing it because he's upset that the streak is losing.
the most
I got
loyal
so
person
angry.
the most loyal person you could ever expect or ever want to have working for your company and being by your side, and you throw that guy under the bus? What kind of
What
what kind
is
of
wrong with you?
scumbag are you? Really? Like even someone who's not a wrestling fan would be able to tell, like, you just don't do that. That is a whole new level of low that I didn't think existed.
So it goes
But
back to
we're
my
still
statement.
going.
Goes back to my statement. You have all these people that look up to Vince as a legit father and a father figure. And in the end, I I'm trying my best not to do a Linkin Park thing. It doesn't matter as long as it benefits him and his business.
And with
And
that,
and
then
at
we
that
went
point
into episode
and
six,
then it
didn't
goes into
we?
yeah. Oh my, that cliffhanger from episode 5. That got me. I'm like, I don't care what time it is. I am hooked to see how this is gonna end. And with what you told me, what episode 6 like made you feel, I'm like, oh my goodness. I was just that Ace Ventura gift that I sent on our chat was just,
Oh boy.
oh boy. And once the episode 6 ended, and I was just going, wow. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, real quick, episode 6 just not only does it go where you think it does, it is probably as complete as it could be to bring us up to WWE in the modern day. Even to briefly going over his comparisons to Donald Trump and how he's acting these days. Just
Oh my God.
and just they do like super rapid fire about like, oh yeah, AEW is coming up, and then Cody Rhodes joined WWE again, and now after that Vince finally retires. Uh, and this that insane quote about like, no, I'm never going to retire, like if you truly retire you die, and I don't understand why people want to retire. Like, okay,
Why do you
enjoy
don't
death. Like,
as he put it, it's like I'm never going to retire. I don't know why people want to stop growing. That's how he put it. I don't know why people would want to stop growing. If you want to retire, you just basically go to die. And if you're retiring, just die.
yeah,
And I'm just going, oh my
meanwhile you're
God.
very fortunate if you even get the chance to work a job that you can work at or would want to work at for your entire life, or be even into your retirement years. That is a luxury that very few people have in this life. I mean, come on. I took that as just an incredible out of touch statement from Vince McMahon, and it turned out to be one of the last ones we got in this documentary. Because right then we got into the entire timeline of scandals and everything that broke in sequence, even during the final, as this docu series was wrapping up. We got quotes from Bruce Pritchard, who saw an early cut of it that said, "Okay, this is just a hit piece. It's terrible. You don't know the real man who supported me during my wife's cancer diagnosis and got her to the best doctors. You're never gonna know the real man. This isn't fair." And then you just see the caption 2 days later. The Janelle Grant bombshell just drops. The ads, the sponsors start backing out, and then that's it. And then that's when you start getting the quotes from years ago about, okay, what do you think Vince McMahon's legacy is going to be? Booker T doesn't have an answer. Trish doesn't have an answer. John
Cena
Cena
doesn't
doesn't
have an
have an
answer.
answer. Hogan doesn't have an answer. And finally, your pal and mine, Tony Atlas, is just like the greatest promoter in history of sports. Full stop. You don't have to like him. I don't like him. I don't respect him, but he put in the work where it counted, and you can't, and he earned that, which I think is about as fair as you can possibly be when it comes to the subject of Vince McMahon. And really, that sort of sums up the entire docu series. Like, obviously, it's horrific, and they do not shy from going over every single happening, every single detail of the suit, of the allegations, of the text messages. And as horrific as they are, they do also balance it out as like, okay, yeah, he did a lot for the business in his prime. He was a creative genius in his prime, but ultimately, he's still guilty of a lot of very terrible things, a lot of mismanagement. And this is what happens when you don't take any accountability for your actions or your choices, and you don't even take any accountability for your past. And you because when you don't patch up your wounds, not only do the wounds become infected, you end up bleeding on people who never wounded you to begin with. That is the
And
legacy of Vince McMahon.
like to add on to that, like yes, he was a creative genius in his time. We're in a point like WWE like is now at a point that would probably never have we never would have gotten to if it wasn't for him. But people need to understand, and it's something that they even bring up. I believe in this episode was continuing with the scandals. You have all of these wrestlers, all of these people who put in the blood, sweat, and tears in that ring to put you in the position you're in now. And when you get to the scandals of all the wrestlers who don't make it to the age of 45, you have your Tests, your Crash Hollies. Uh, who else? Who else did they bring up? Um, oh, this is gonna bother me. Okay, but just all I can't think of the names right now, but they did list wrestlers that like who die young, and when they ask Vince about it, all he can do is, so what? What does that mean? What does that like? How does that affect me? And you have the interviewer going, these people gave you are basically giving their lives for you, and all you're doing is just basically spitting on their legacy, and all he can respond was just, oh, boo-hoo, nah, nah, nah. Like, I watched that video, and all I can think of, I cannot believe I ever supported this man. I am a huge professional wrestling fan. I love professional wrestling. I love WWE. I love WWE so much right now. And it's even more so now. It's just because it's not him. It's a different environment. It's not Vince McMahon's environment. It's not his toxicity ruining this company. It's under good hands, both in the business side and on the creative side, that he was always, we even said in the episode 2 was titled Heat. All he would want to do is just try and find some way to piss the fans off. He kept talking the entire show, what would be best for the fans. I never believed, I never believed that at one bit when he said, "Oh, I'm trying to think what's best for the fans." Because it's not about what the fans want. It's about like, oh, fans are reacting this way. How can this affect me? How can this make my business better? It's not about the fans. I mean, a perfect example of that in our times watching is the Daniel Bryan Yes movement, because that was never supposed to happen. Hell, they were trying to give the Yes movement to Big Show during that time, but us as fans had to twist their arms to get what we want, because we know what they're doing is not best for business. Having pushing this guy that we love is what's best for business. And I just look back on all this time, and I just would go, yes, he's made plenty of moments throughout the years, throughout the decades. But was he really that great of a storyteller? He was a good moment maker, but was he a good storyteller? And like all the times try and look back on all the years I've watched WWE in particular, because it's his product, or it's his business at that time when we were all growing up watching it. And I'm just going, was there ever really a storyline that just stayed consistent, stayed just mind boggling? Or was it just we just wanted to see the people succeed? And oh, that was just, we have this great moment of Bryan Danielson holding the two belts. We have this great moment of The Rock and Hulk Hogan staring each other at WrestleMania. Was it 18?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah, because it was right. That 17 was Stone Cold, Vince McMahon shaking hands. We have that. I think really his best storyline was probably him versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And even that wasn't as a consist when it comes to storyline wise as consistent, because we don't know what's going on with the story. All we have are just the moments. We have him beating up Vince McMahon in the hospital. How did he get in that hospital? I don't remember. All I know is that Vince was in the hospital with an injured leg, and Stone Cold Steve Austin beat the shit out of him.
And
Oh,
even
there's a dump
then,
truck.
that doesn't really even sum up what Vince's role really was. He was he was a promoter. He wasn't he wasn't just a agent. He wasn't just a storyteller. He wasn't just a booker. He was the promoter. And those people did exist, but he also had a team of people flanking him. I don't care who you are, no one person, no one is a success alone. No one can make it on their own. And if you think you need to be that person for whatever reason, whether true or not, in order to, again, I just keep it the way the documentary is framed. Not, it doesn't tell us just what happened. It gives us the full context as to why. Where it's just like, you know what? Yeah, Vince McMahon did some good things, did a lot, but he could not do it all. He could not do it alone. And him thinking that it was all just about him in his own little world, that's what ultimately led to the wounds and the infection that turned him into the monster we now know him as today. And I think the piece as a whole was about as kind and fair as it could be given the circumstances. But either way, I still say this was absolutely worth a watch. But before we get into our final beard ratings for the entire docu series, Pete, do you have any other questions, comments, whatever else before we get into our beard ratings?
Thank you to my fantastic tag team partner. We just say how you presented was eloquent and fantastic. And I'm just so glad that you're on Team Pete for Bad Blood. But beyond that,
I ain't saying nothing, but continue.
it's all good, Scholar Jeff. It's all good. Let me ask you something. So, from the gist of it, I there are current interviews from for the Netflix documentary, plus also past ones from like I would presume like Piper's in there when Piper had that thing from E.
Piper's interview was not part of this. Most of them were cribbed from interviews that occurred in 2022 when most of the filming happened. There were a
Oh,
couple of other interviews that happened later when around the time the allegations came out and right after to sort of like round it all out.
Who was they after? I don't remember. And like, I know they Vince canceled his last interview the day after the allegations
I
came
don't
out.
remember his name. It was just like it was some sort of like news uh
Oh, it's one of the
journalist.
journalists.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah. If you go back and watch, it has
Because I don't
if it's not listed as being like a 2022 interview, it's probably more of the more recent ones. Yes.
because
do
I
so.
don't remember anyone like post allegations
Yeah, maybe I'm
making a
misremembering the
comment.
exact chronology, but it was something like that. Yeah.
Is it the familiar faces with the superstars and the wrestlers that appear on this six-part documentary? Like, will we be seeing? You mentioned like John Cena. I would think Hulk Hogan, like Stone Cold, Undertaker. Like, is it just a
They're all
whole?
throughout. There's a whole bunch, some more than others, but they're all throughout all 6 episodes.
Wrestlers wise, I believe it was Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, The Rock, Cody Rhodes, um,
Jimmy Hart
Tony
for like 10
Atlas,
seconds. Tony
Tony
Atlas
Atlas,
was putting
Jimmy
in
Hart
some
for a few
work.
seconds, Paul Heyman,
Triple H
Triple H, of course, and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. I think
and
that's it.
Shane and
And then Shane
Stephanie
and
if they
Steph, but
count.
like the wrestlers wise, that's it. And then you just add Shane and Stephanie and Linda.
Oh,
I will
okay.
say Lind. Oh, and Trish Stratus, of course, because of course they
Yeah.
when they talk about Stephanie, they talk about the women's revolution and, and just how different the Attitude Era was for the ladies and how they're just sex appeal. That's all they were
Credit
there
where it's
for.
due. Trish seemed to know what she was getting into right away, and like, yeah, that's part of the show.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to like it when I'm brought on my knees and bullied to act like a dog. You're not supposed to like that. You know, Vince is a bad guy. You're not supposed to like that at all. Yada yada. Like
You have Vince
Vin-
McMahon making out with
Trish
Tori
came.
Wilson in a bathroom. You have Stacy Kleber dancing for him on a desk. You have uh, uh, Sable pretty much is like, oh, it doesn't matter why she. It's like it doesn't matter she sued us as long it doesn't matter she came back to work. So yeah,
Meanwhile, someone pointed out, like, oh yeah, and when modern Vince was asked about his on-screen relationship with Sable, he was just like, I don't remember too much about that, but if it was, he was like, his life was flashing in front of his eyes because he didn't want to get killed by Brock, which I thought
I
was
It,
kind of
believe
it
funny.
Heyman
must
was
be
there
some
during.
show to watch or some documentary to watch with like especially seeing Vince McMahon and like
If
his clear expressions that you gentlemen have pointed out.
I actually think Heyman was there with the
He
with
was.
Vince
He was in the
and
room. You could hear him
helping him
talk.
remember stuff. Yeah, you don't see him, but you hear when they have like Vince centric scenes. You hear there are a couple of times you do hear Paul. It's like, oh yeah, so yeah yeah you did that. He had to be reminded because guys like oh the guy is over 80 years old. So
I'm not even so sure he actually totally forgot. I think he just had sort of like selective memory with certain things, especially when
hmm
it comes to Brock's wife. Like, ew. But
Don't want to
anyway,
make that man angry.
no thank you, even now. But all that aside, bring us full circle. Tarek, if you had to give this docu series a beard rating, 1 through 5, what would you give it?
it was a very good documentary series. It definitely did its part on telling us the story and just the in all out the tragedy of Vince McMahon. Just the tragedy of what trauma can have like trauma that you can get in your youth can really affect the monster you become if you choose to, as you put it, Jeff, just fight through it because you wanted to show that you're tough and all and just not a wuss. You can power through it. That just shows what kind of person could be molded into really someone who's just a disgusting human being. Like I there like yes, I appreciate the effort he put in to make WWE the conglomerate it is today because now that he's gone, we have some of the best pro wrestling and storytelling and character development this company has ever seen.
God
That
damn it,
to the
this
point
country as well.
this country has ever seen. Hell, this world has ever seen because now they're actually expanding and not just having like one special event in a different country. We're having multiple events in multiple countries. This is world wrestling entertainment. So now we're actually really emphasizing the world aspect because you have this guy that just oh he's in a storyline was oh the evil foreign heel. Even in the 2000s, we have oh the American hero versus the foreign heel. There is no more of that anymore. And it was a story that died long ago that you just had to keep being reminded that yeah that happened in the 80s where it actually fits or in the 70s and 80s where it actually fits. This is a different time. And this isn't a time where you got to draw as much heat as possible because just getting people angry gets you off, apparently. I cannot, for the life of me, like, yeah, I appreciate what he did, but when it comes to Vince McMahon's legacy, it's completely ruined. Just showing what kind of extents that and kind of trauma that he puts on the people that look up to him to get to where it is today. And yeah, I cannot for the life of me ever support him ever again. I hate it because I love as much as I used to love singing No Chance in Hell. Now I hear that theme song and it just makes me sick to my stomach. So when it comes to the documentary itself, I'm gonna give it a solid four out of five because it did its job, but it's also just reminding me that throughout my time growing up, I was supporting someone that was so emotionally damaged that he did that to the people that look up to him and loved him. And it's just really hard to support that. And I'm still gonna continue loving WWE because once again, it's not his company anymore. He has nothing to do with it. And I just would say hallelujah to that because it can now be put in a position where it's beyond where it could possibly be under him. So yeah, 4 out of 5.
I am going to give this a 5 out of 5, full goat face, full stars, and not so much because it's about Vince McMahon. For me, first of all, as a documentary, as an informational piece, it's about as concise as you can get on the subject that so many of us know so much about.
Mm-hmm.
Are there some details that are sort of like minimized or not addressed in full? Yes, of course. But then there's a lot of them. Too many to squeeze into even a 6 episode docu series. So, but I still say it's more than enough to be required, like base level required watching for any modern or upcoming scholar of wrestling in the most literal sense. As a docu series, I really appreciated the storytelling of the piece itself and how it sort of like weaves in and also explains who this person is and who the wrestling business is intended to work, right? Whether you're a longtime fan or just someone who doesn't even know what wrestling is, it all comes together, and it's sort of even just setting Vince McMahon up as an unreliable narrator. It's as fair as a piece like this can get, while also not shying away from how horrific his later stage uh, scandals are and were and still are. There's definitely a paper trail here, and I say this without irony. You can see clearly how Vince clearly screwed Vince. And he's not a victim here. He's a terribly wounded man who takes no account for his action, no accountability for his actions, takes no ownership of his choices he makes in life. But that being said, it all comes up to a very fascinating docu series that is his, like I said earlier, is not only memorable in everything it covers and its execution, but also historic it is because just given the way that it was filmed and the development cycle, we're probably never going to see a documentary quite like this again. So, and I was immensely entertained from top to bottom, even when I was pissed off and yelling at my screen. So, with all that things considered, 5 out of 5, goat face. If you haven't seen already, go watch it.
Let me tell you, mine is a hopeful 5 out of 5 goat face. Like I
I'll
said, I
tell
have
you,
not.
if you ever get the chance at some point,
It's worth the
even if it's
watch.
like a year or so from now,
Oh,
definitely watch it. It's
100%. Let
worth
me
your
tell you,
time.
thank you so much. Like my tag team partner, we're Team Jeter over here. That's
Oh,
right.
stop it. Now you're
Team
lumping
Jeter
in
over
with
here.
Derek Jeter.
No, I'm thinking, put Scholar Jeff, you got to put the J first, and then my name is Peter, so you got to put Peter, because you are the first scholar and you're my tag team partner, more importantly. And I know you have my back, when it comes to be bad blood, because that's how we are. Just scholars to the end. But just to touch base on the whole Vince thing from my angle is like, I'm very excited to check out this documentary. Obviously, knowing the scandals and everything he's had throughout his life and what he also has done with the business. You look at it as a crazy situation where the man made wrestling become this major phenomenon that just you made millions of people's fans where they have belts walking around, shirts, you yeeting every time, you are saying yes every time. Like this man built it, but you can't take away from how he got to it from what this documentary is apparently showing and demonstrating with the problems he's had over the decades that he's been in the wrestling business. Like I said, I'm very intrigued. I cannot wait to get my hands on this documentary. And let me tell you something, Scholar Jeff and Scholar Tarek. As soon as I watch, I will, of course, give my thoughts here on the Scholars of Wrestling show. So look forward to that, I would say, because, like my tag team partner says, what does my tag team partner say?
Never eat a bologna sandwich in the dead of winter. That's what I always say.
I think he threw you a curveball to try and close the episode.
Well,
No,
if you
I'm
want
just.
a curveball to close the episode, that's how we. Now that you know our opinions on the Vince McMahon documentary, now is the time of the episode where I turn it over to you, our fellow fans. What did you think about the McMahon documentary? What score would you give it? And what are you looking forward to hearing next? Wherever you think, comment below and let us all know all across the internet, but especially joining in on the conversation on Twitter because we're not calling it X. Fool, where can they reach you?
You can reach me keeping being the Paul Heyman for for Brian's championship run at the Avatar. Undisputed.
And Scholar Pete, where can they reach you?
You reach me at my best scholar, Scholar Jeff and Improv Pete. We look forward to your fan mail.
And you can join in the conversation with me at I'm Robbie Rage. And as always, for all of these relevant social media links and much more, check out the link tree in the description box below. That's linktree/scholars of wrestling.
Like and
And with
subscribe.
that too. And with that, we are going to close it right here. We're going to be back next week for some more bad blood and more exciting times to come. But you already knew that because you know who we are. We are the Scholars of Wrestling, and you have just been schooled. You're
You're
welcome.
welcome.
You're
See you all
welcome.
next week for some bad blood.
Stand back.